Way. Yesterday was quite a run, huh? Yes, but I really must thank everyone for staying through yesterday. Very interesting and interesting conversations we had all through. We had a reception. If you were at the reception last night, can I see you by hands? You people like enjoyment. All right, welcome to day 2 of the symposium. My name still remains Wisdom Chap Jumbo, and I'm very happy to be your host again for day 2. And yesterday was really, really explosive, and a lot of conversations. We'll throw a highlight shortly as I walk us through all we had yesterday, from learning about the tools, learning about how open source practitioners can work, or practitioners can work with open source, learning what the academia is doing within the space, learning about tools like Prospect and Energy Access Explorer, which of course we're going to go deep into today. And the Open Geeks sessions were really good. Those presentations and the open mic sessions also were really in-depth analysis, of course, on open source communities and how we can collaborate and work more, and of course what is happening within the energy space. And then, the second session yesterday sort of brought adopters and some of the companies using these open source tools to give experience. It was really practical, if you recall, and I won't fail but mention we started the day with, of course, remarks from the REA MD, Mr. Abba Aliu, who was here, of course, to show the REA support for this event, which we are deeply appreciative for. It was really an interesting one. This is first of its kind open source in energy access event in Nigeria. And let me use the opportunity to really thank EnAccess and the organizers, and other organizers, World Resource Institute, the Energy Access Explorer, and our sponsors. Without their support, we won't have been able to achieve this. The World Bank, Prospects, Energy Sector Management Assistance Program. We really must thank you for your sponsorship to make sure this event came true. Day 2 will start, of course, by going into, again, much more interesting conversations, but this time very practical. You remember the sessions yesterday sort of hinted on some of these tools, and we promised that today we'll be going practical and showing you how it works, telling you even much more about them. And I must thank you for being here. Our online audience, we want to specially welcome you to day 2 of the event. Your attention, your time is not taken for granted, and we thank you so much for joining us again for day 2. Like I said yesterday, conversations will be on Discord. And please, if you haven't joined the Discord, we have QR codes on the screen that you want to scan, to take you directly to setting up your Discord account and joining the open source symposium or open source energy access community on Discord. And we have created different forums where we will be continuing the conversations, taking questions from. We are not taking questions from any other platform. If you're watching online, put your questions on Discord, as we have created different forums for all conversations that we'll be having today, like we did yesterday. So please, very important, our speakers, our panelists, they are also on Discord. And some of the questions you will ask, if we can't take them while the session is on, we will be taking them on Discord, which they have been responding to many questions since yesterday, and we've had good sign-ups on Discord already. We want to have much more people to join. Remember yesterday we spoke about building a community and how that is helpful as we drive open source conversations, and many of our speakers alluded to that fact, but it's something that we need. And so we started to build one, which is really important, and that's why we're keeping conversations on Discord. All right, everyone in this room who is not on Discord, can I see you by hand? Who is not? Who is not on Discord? Okay. Our audience are very compliant. Please, a round of applause for yourself. Please, do it for yourself. Do it for yourself. All right. All right, so day 2 is here. But before we start, I see we have many non-Nigerians here. Maybe I try to tell you how we welcome people in Nigeria. I thought about it as I was thinking to start. I'll try. People in the room can help me. If we have more Igbos in the room, how we welcome people in Nigeria, I'll say Dewo. Did I get it? Okay, can we say Dewo? Okay, that's good. All right, if you're Yoruba, we say Ekabo. Yoruba, did I get that correctly? Did I? How many of us are Yorubas here? Okay, so I'm correct, sir, right? And I will say one for my own language. I'm from Ijaw. I'm from the Ibani tribe. And when we see people and welcome them to an event, we say Iboma. I'm happy I'm teaching you my language today. Anyways, but welcome. On behalf of the organizers, I want to specially welcome everyone to day 2. We'll kick up right into it because we lost about 10 minutes or even more already, trying to make sure everyone is well seated and don't miss anything. And the first session we have here, I want to welcome someone from the open source community Africa. Remember, we had someone yesterday, another one person today again, to speak to us from the open source community, sort of to formally give us that opening remark and make brief presentation. The open source community Africa is very important as we begin to build this other community on open source and energy access. And working with them, partnering with them has been very key to really get into that community even much more. Without much ado, ladies and gentlemen, please permit me to welcome Mr. Samson Godi for his presentation. All right, I think you're 2. Should I? Yeah, 2. All right, Ruth. Okay, I didn't have that on my... Okay. Please, a round of applause for Ruth again.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you very much. I came in yesterday and I was really excited because, again, this is one of the first type of events, open source. Okay. So today I'm supposed to come and give a brief of what the Open Source Community Africa is all about, and then try to make this as interactive as possible. Initially, I was supposed to give this talk alone, but of course Ruth is here, so there's no way I would give this talk without bringing Ruth in. So I'll just ignore this one. So the goal here is just to talk about the growth of open source, the growth of Open Source Community Africa, and what we've been doing in the last roughly 8 years. Just a bit of background. I'm the co-founder for the Open Source Community Africa. Co-founded the community sometime in late 2017 with my co-founder, Ada Unduka Oyom. She's the founder for SheCode Africa, for people that are familiar with SheCode Africa. I run membership, part of the board membership for something called Open Source Collective. So it's kind of a collaborative platform where you can support and fund open source in a transparent manner, which Oscar is part of it. And in terms of, some tactical thing about open source, I don't know if many of you here are familiar with the One Laptop Per Child project, which has been coupled for a couple years now. And then I do random stuff, and just like Roots, I'm one of the GitHub stars. So what is Oscar, basically? So Oscar is, I want to say, just like any other community, but I think the most focused here about what the Open Source Community Africa is doing is not just to come and create something like a different community, but to kind of come in and nurture an existing community. When, again, like I said, like 8, 9 years ago, when I started my career doing open source, the language that I typically see within the African ecosystem was very e-commerce based, and it was, if not the world of proprietary platforms all over the world compared to what you would see in like the likes of Europe, North America, and Asia. So, and of course, there were some efforts, either smaller, larger, or multiple duplicates around that part. So the goal was for us to come together, identify people that were already advocating for open source, to find a way to create an enabling community where we can, one, showcase things that we've been doing across the continent, but of course to work with people across the world. So Oscar basically started solving that specific problem by, starting the community. And the core focus here is, like you can see on the slide, is economical growth, innovation, and digital inclusion. And the reason why this is interesting is because looking back now in the last 8 years, we not just started spiking up, and I wouldn't give all the credit to Oscar. Of course, there are other organizations that have been doing really amazing work, like the likes of the GDGs and the likes of Facebook Developer Circle, for people that has been there for quite some time. And then, of course, there are other developers community that have been thriving. But again, if you go to github.com right now, or you go to GitHub Acting Octoverse report, in the last 5 years, Nigeria as a country has been growing 45% year over year in terms of open source contribution. As of the last time I spoke to the GitHub team last October, I think Nigeria just crossed over 1 million plus developers on GitHub alone, right? So just to show how much of, I don't know if it's a good thing that a lot of people are spending more time on GitHub and playing outside, but it's just to show how important, it's just to show how important how open source has been the main driver. And again, looking at it, again, going back a couple years back, when you see the traditional jobs, before the whole pandemic and some of the tech jobs going global remote, you see things like, oh, we want X number of people to do these jobs, but because of the traditional way of the way jobs are created in this part of the world, you start seeing things like, oh, we need someone with 10 plus years of experience. And then if you're 25, which is, again, you fall under the 80% of the average Nigerian age bracket, you now start asking yourself, where do I start gaining those 10 plus years of experience when you're 25? And the interesting thing is that's kind of what open source can do from the start, because you can basically start, because again, majority of my friends started writing code when they were much, much younger. And then growing, you basically have a trace of things you've been contributing over the years. And now that's why a whole lot of people now you see under 28-year-old people being directors at company, engineering managers and company, not because, they have connection to the CEO of the companies, because they've been contributing 10 plus years in open source. So that's kind of the language we've been speaking in Oscar, and trying to make sure that there are a lot of more people doing such. And to kind of summarize before Ruth starts, Oscar as a community, we're trying to drive two things. The first is the project, and the second is the community. The community has been the focus in the last 5 years, when we kickstarted our first open source festival. So the Open Source Festival is just like any global event that you know. We started it in 2020 in Lagos. I think our first number was just around 800 plus, and we just concluded our last one last year in Lagos with over 2,000 plus people. And of course, we had support from the likes of the Googles, the Microsoft, and the rest, right? And just to kind of show you how people, not just in Nigeria or in other part of Africa, but it kind of gives you an idea of how people are speaking this language. And basically, Oscar, what we've been trying to do is to bring that experience that we typically would experience in places like North America, FASTEM, open source summit and the likes, and bringing that experience down here. So I think, Ruth, over to you.
Okay. So, yeah, bit of intro. I think for people that were not here yesterday, I'm the program manager at Open Source Community Africa, and I work a lot around open source. I think for the past 5 years, and Samson introduced me to open source. By the way, it was one of those persons that I got inspired by. So the second part of this is sharing the role of community, and maybe more specific to open source community in Africa, the role of these communities in building open source globally. I think you can use the clicker. So I'll use examples here with how Oscar has been able to localize, or even through the events, like Samson said, the events that we do, we have been able to localize open source solutions, global open source solutions. So one example I want to use is GNOME. When did GNOME Africa start? I think that was 2020, yes. So before, because of the work that Oscar has done, and giving credit to other open source communities as well in Africa, but through these events, we're able to bring in people from the global north. I think I was sharing this with someone yesterday. We're able to bring in people from the global north to recognize the work that is being done here. And I'm definitely sure that with people that have come from different places here to Nigeria, you're also seeing a lot of the work that is being done here physically, right? So now bringing people for those events, they're able to bring their solutions, like those OSS solutions, and they meet our people, our community. And I think one of the drivers of like having chapters, we're beginning to see a lot of global open source communities create local chapters. And that's progress to us. GNOME Africa is one of them that they were able to, through I think 2020, they started seeing that, okay, we need to include more people into our community. We need to make our community more inclusive. I think then they started this project about onboarding people better. So just that localization of OSS solutions is what we chase after, is what we bring people to see that, yes, there are vibrant people here. There's the misconception of the way people view young people from the global south. But when they come here, it changes that narrative, and they are beginning to also adopt, look for ways to include, people from this software developers community, people here. GNOME Africa is one of them. I also lead a community called Chaos Africa. That also started when I started contributing there. I was like the only, I think we're about 3 Africans in the entire project, right? So after 2 years, right, with the advocacy work we do, we started seeing more people join the community, more Africans from different countries join the community. And then the board was like, okay, let's have a chapter, right? So that's one of the goals that we chase after, trying to localize OSS solutions. And I think yesterday, Anita touched upon the advantages of diversity, bringing in more people with diverse skill sets. It improves the project, right? So that's one of the things. Also advocacy, I think Samson has talked about that a lot, like the work that we do in ensuring that people understand what open source is, know where to place their efforts, know where to contribute, know how to contribute. And even after they contribute, what are the opportunities that are available? We run a lot of virtual sessions, to educate people about opportunities in open source. Google has been one of our biggest supporters, right, with their internship programs. I think the last internship program, we did like a virtual session where people were able to learn about, okay, this is an opportunity, this is how I can be part of it. So everything revolving around advocacy. On the policy part, that's also something I think, even like Samson said, we have been focusing on community for the past 7 years. We're beginning to think about projects, and as well as policy. We also want to see how, what are the policies around, say for example, our country, Nigeria, around open source. So if there are even governmental people here that want to chat with us as well, we'll be around as well to get to know how we can adopt these different policies to promote the use of open source software.
Sorry, I'm a bit surprised of that slide, so I'm trying to read whatever. Okay, great. Yes, so I think Ruth basically, so I think Ruth basically has given a whole lot of information already. So I think, again, trying to wrap up here. I think the work Oscar we've been doing, like, the couple years now is great, right? I think compared to, again, including other organizations, and looking at the last 8 years and seeing statistics and seeing how in fact, I think in 2020 when we did the open source festival, where the likes of a lot of companies came. In fact, it was the last event, or was supposed to be. Well, thankfully, it wasn't the last event. It happened, I think, 2 days before the global pandemic hit. So we just finished the festival in Lagos, and in 2 days we were like, oh, some people even got stuck in Lagos to kind of show how fun it was. But then I think one thing that that was important is how a whole lot of companies started hiring from the event, right? And in fact, one interesting thing, and you mentioned the Google internship program. I remember in 2018 when I went to Mountain View for the first time, and I met the Google open source team, and this was supposed to be a global event where, for context, there's something called Google Summer of Code, where Google pay people to contribute to open source. And then, so people contribute to open source and Google pay them money to do some sort of internship. So going to that event, I sort of asked myself a question. I was like, oh, where are the people from Africa, not just Africa, but also people that are obviously not non-Americans? And then there were fundamental things like visas, travel, of course, there are a whole lot of that list. And it was like, okay, how do we solve this without going through that typical government structure? And the goal was to come and create an enabling environment where people can come together and do things. And now, again, just like what Ruth mentioned, and that's where I want to wrap up here, is everything, almost every organization right now we've been working with have some sort of localized structure that enable African to work with them globally. And of course, that also translates to even hiring in this case. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And have a really nice conference.
All right, please, round of applause for Samson and Ruth. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Just to call on someone to give, further highlights of, how day one went. Demetrius? Or should we skip that? We should? You sure? Did I miss anything in the highlight I gave? Everything covered? Okay, fantastic. Since we can skip that, I believe we can move to the next session real quick. We talked about the tool Prospect yesterday. And like I said earlier, we promised to give in-depth, hands-on on what that tool does and how it works. Okay, so permit me to invite Brianna and Razvan to come and talk to us about Prospect and all we need to know about the tool. Are we ready? Okay. All right, while they are putting that together, I again want to remind everyone to please drop your comments and the conversations on Discord. Very important, especially for our online audience. In case you're just joining and you were not part of day one. So please join on Discord. If you can see the QR code, the link is www.community.enaccess.org, so you can quickly go and create your account and join the community. Very important. Razvan, are you ready? Okay. The pointer should work, so you don't have to, because this is low. It's coming. Okay.
Oh yeah, now it is. Okay, do you want to get... Excellent. Okay. Let's do here in the wind of the AC. Everyone who's been on the podium knows the wind of change blowing in your face when you present. So good morning, everyone. For those who were not here yesterday, I'm Razvan, and I'm with GIZ Get Invest.
And I'm Brianna, and I'm with the Access to Energy Institute, specifically with the Prospect project.
I'm not getting sabotaged by the microphone. Good thing we have Lenny. Battery. Okay. Yes, now it's working again. Where was I before I was being sabotaged? Wind of change? No. Well, basically, we're here to give you a brief introduction into Prospect, what it is and how you could potentially contribute. And without further ado, let me start. So basically, Prospect is an open source platform for collecting, visualizing, aggregating, verifying, sharing data, and sharing specifically energy data and energy access data. And what is special about Prospect is the fact that it can collect data automatically, either through smart equipment, so either connecting to the inverters, to the smart meters, and their respective platforms. Also through mobile money payments, CRM platforms, and other databases. I feel like technology is not with me today. And so there's one thing about getting data in, then also being able to visualize the data, aggregate it, and verify it, and I will come to the verification part very soon. And then also to have the possibility to share data with others, either exporting raw data or through other APIs. And so the way we see Prospect as a public infrastructure, basically, for energy data, the idea is to, you can think of Prospect like the public road connecting different data warehouses and platforms and sources. And so you have the pay-go platforms, you have the hardware manufacturers that I mentioned earlier, mobile money, banking platforms, survey tools, etc. So data coming into Prospect, but then also having data flowing out of Prospect, either in government tools or platforms, in program management solutions, in industry market intelligence platforms or carbon finance or other platforms like energy planning, etc. And so, as I mentioned, it's all about having this public infrastructure that is open source, and it's built a lot on these integrations, incoming and outgoing integrations. And the idea is not so much to replace existing solutions in the ecosystem, but rather facilitate the exchange of data between the different solutions in the ecosystem. So Prospect, a bit of, not marketing, but a bit of background. Prospect is supported, is a collaboration of Get Invest and Access to Energy Institute, and is supported by the European Union, Germany, Norway, the Netherlands, Sweden, and Austria. And so thanks to the funding of these donors, we could focus on a free-to-use and open-source-based solution. And because we target energy access, Prospect deals with a whole range of technologies, from smaller pay-as-you-go devices to CNI, to mini-grids, to even grid extension and clean cooking. And as I mentioned, the use of the code is, well, I don't want to take away too much from Brianna, but basically the code is open source and the platform is hosted on by A2EI. And Brianna will share more of that later. And so what we're trying to do with Prospect is to access in real time, to have it in a very low cost and low effort manner. And what's also special is we're trying to combine financial, operational, and technical data in one place. And so when we look at the type of data that we can collect, we talk about let's say two types, more the fingerprint data and the heartbeat data. And so the fingerprint data is more the static data that you can use to identify a client or identify a solar system or a connection. It's things like location, name of customer, phone number, and this can be used to verify a connection or an energy access connection. And the heartbeat is more the time series data, the dynamic data that can vary, like the voltage of a battery or the consumption of a client, and this changes throughout time. And so the idea is, or payment data, for example. And so the idea is to combine these two types of data. So we have several types of data, and we have also several sources of data to bring it all together in one platform. Unsure how it will work with the internet connection. I prepared 3 slides with screenshots, so let me go through them, and then I will also show you the live demonstration. Better safe than sorry. So the way data gets into Prospect, there are several ways of doing that. We focus, as I mentioned, on these integrations. So we can either have an API pool where Prospect builds connectors, and then, for example, in the case of Victron hardware, which is already integrated, let's say a distributor or a mini-grid company from Nigeria can just put in their VRM, which is the Victron cloud platform, username and password, and through that, Prospect will automatically fetch the data associated with this Victron account. Similarly, there are also API pushes where, and this is where it's mostly more of a customized platform. So, for example, without naming any, okay, I've already started naming companies, but but for example, a company like Bbox, where they design their own platform, then we would rather go for an API push because they are their own users of their own platforms, and they don't have several, let's say, companies or distributors using the platform. So this is one of the ways we distinguish between the two types of API integrations that we work with, and we are perpetually working on including more and more of these integrations. So hopefully this list will get longer and longer. And then besides these, let's say, specific integrations, we also can get data from Google Drive, from S3 buckets, from uploading just custom files and like comma-separated value files or Excel files through manual uploads. Voila. So that's one part. And then I will come to 2 use cases. One is the use case of a funder or of a program, a subsidy program manager, or of an investor who wants to look at the portfolio of the different companies or operators in their portfolio. And so what Prospect does, it allows to track each finance system or connection, and you can assess the operation and sustainability as well as the impact that it creates. So, for example, if you are an RBF program, you can use Prospect to collect and to simplify your verification, and you digitalize your verification by getting and triangulating and using several sources of truth. So basically having the possibility to look at the mobile money data coming in, the data coming from, let's say, Angaza regarding the sale. And so you have, for one specific customer or for one specific connection, you have several sources that facilitate then the verification of this client. So for example, you could design a program in which you say, okay, if I can have the sale of the data and I can have the payment of the sale of the system, and the payment data associated with that system, then I could automatically verify and approve a connection. And you can focus, for example, your field and phone verification to those systems where the data is not matching, for example. So you can reduce the field and phone verification. It also ensures additionality, because you then can mark if a certain program, if a certain system or connection has been subsidized already. So a company cannot go to one donor and get incentive or get subsidies and then use the same connection to go to another donor to claim the same subsidy twice. And also, if donor one uses one platform to manage their results-based financing and another donor uses another platform, then by integrating once with Prospect, you can then export the data to the specific hardwares, softwares, solutions of the other, the donors or the program managers. And last but not least, also the use case for the companies. So what the companies can benefit from using Prospect is by having all their data into one platform. When I was here the first time in Nigeria in February and I engaged with solar companies, they were saying, well, we're using 2 or 3 types of inverters and we're using 2 or 3 types of meters, and so I have to log in to each platform. Some companies then develop Excel to be able to compare both, and then they say, well, my generation is tracked with this platform and my smart meters are tracked with the other. And so for a company, Prospect offers the possibility to connect all these different platforms and get the data into one place. Voila. And then also the possibility to export the data. If then the rural notification agency or authority asks you, we want these data, then you could easily export that. And if your investors tell them, we need some other data, then you can export that, or you can give them access via Prospect to your data, and you can decide in a very granular way which data do you want to share with others. Voila, so that's it from my side. I would go now to Brianna to go take us through the technical side.
Yes, okay, I'm gonna see logistically how we do this because I want to be able to access the laptop. I don't want it to block the screen though, is the problem. How about, is it okay if I come down, or is, I think this is fine, right? Okay, let me pull it out. Thank you. There we go. Oh yeah, thank you. Okay. Okay, so I'm very excited. I hope that there are like some nerds. I see some nerdy people. Maybe not everyone. Perfect. Great. Okay. So let's see. So all of our work, it's all open source. It's on GitLab. So we are in the Prospect Energy group. So I'm just going to walk a little bit through, like, if someone would want to understand how to contribute or how to use this locally, you can do both. So like Razvan said, we have 3 general target audiences. Like a funder who would want to be able to see all of the companies or organizations that they're funding in a singular place that's standardized, in which case they could use our hosted instance of Prospect. A government as well could use the same. So an REA, for example, any governmental agency could also use the standardized format once a company has integrated with us to put the data in. But then also we have a third user, which could be an individual company if they want a way to easily access their data and visualize it in some ways that, like, we've already set up, given a sort of standardized way to visualize time series, payment data, etc. So I won't go into that at this point. But so if you were to come in and you were trying to do the third, for example, and you wanted to make a connector, or you wanted to connect to Prospect in some way, you go to the Prospect server here, and it's not working. So great, we have it open here. Within this is these are all of the folders that we have. I will quickly show you just an overview. We have a wiki here that explains everything. I really took to heart yesterday the people that were talking about making it understandable for users outside of your group that's maintaining it. I think we have not done that to the extent that we could. So if anyone does want to look and they're like, this is confusing, trust me, it's not you, it's us. You can feel free to give us that feedback as well. We really want to make it user-friendly. So just a quick summary of the infrastructure. So generally we have some data sources here. So if you're like a rather small organization, you might have CSV or Excel for your sales, for your, let's say you wouldn't have your time series data from your device in that format, but let's say your sales and your customer lists, things like that, could be in CSV format. We also connect to various sources, like Razvan said. So like Victron, for example, is one of the connectors that we have where they have data on device usage. And PegOps is another example where they might have payment data. So if you use PegOps, all you have to do is put in your credentials, and then automatically your data would show up in Prospect for you to access, and then you could choose others who you want to have access to it. So you can say, yes, I want to give RIA Nigeria access to my data, or I want to give GIZ, etc. So all the data sources are here. Then we have a second layer. This is facilitated mostly through APIs or through a manual upload. Let's see. Yes. So you can we have formats where you can put data on Google Drive, AWS, S3, etc. in a specific format. Or we have API connectors, either that a company can design on their own, or we can design internally. Either way is, like, we're happy to do it, but if we don't have the resources, then of course, like, a company would be welcome to. If they don't have the resources, we could also hire. I now see that there's a large open source community in Nigeria, which is fantastic. That could also help with us with that. Our stack is both Ruby and Python, so if there are Ruby and Python developers, that would be great. So after the data come in this format where it's either through an API or in a standardized format in S3 or Google Drive, we put the data into min.io, which is just a large database where we have taken all the fields that are identifiable. So we anonymize them, or we don't anonymize, we pseudonymize, so that the same data will always appear with the same encrypted key, so you can make sure that you can see that it's the same person or the same device. We blur everything, encode it, and standardize it in a particular form. Then once we've done that, we have a bunch of transformers, so more code here. By the way, so this layer here, this is one of the layers that we work on and that we could use other people to help work on, contributing to, taking from min.io to Postgres, or rather taking from the source to min.io, and then from min.io to Postgres. Once it's in Postgres, it's in a very standardized format that I can go through, which is quite simple. And then we have this web application, like Razvan showed. So I'm gonna skip over how to actually sign in, but I will show the entity diagram. That's way too small. Razvan, how do I make it bigger? It's quite simple. So basically we have a few key tables. Thank you, that's perfect. Great. So we have data on meters. That's in a standardized format. And then we have, for example, so this would be like, what's the meter number? What's the lat long of it? Where, what's the, what is it measuring? And then we have a meters TS, which is the meters time series. So it says like, what's the power going in and out of the meter? What's the voltage on the meter? What's the current, etc. Separate from this, we have payments. So this is also a time series table, just with payments over time for each customer or for each device. We have grids as well. This is for mini grids. So this would have details on energy generation, energy generated by the mini grid, or rather this one just has the basic information about the grid. And then we have a grid time series table as well, which has information about the energy generated by the grid over time and the energy going to customers. And then for solar home systems as well, we have information about a specific solar home system, the make, model, some of the details about the loan contract, and then how the solar home system is being used over time. So I was gonna go pretty deep into the code, but I feel like this might not be necessary. I'll just show quickly, for example, some of our connectors and adapters would be So here are all the kinds of adapters that we have set up right now. You can see, these should be in alphabetical order. This shouldn't have gotten past review. But so we have Angaza, we have Spark Meter, Victron, Stellar, PIGOPS, etc. So if you have your data in any of these formats, it's very easy to upload it, and then you can view it in Prospect. And then I was going to go into the transformers, but I think I'll skip that. Maybe we can quickly look at the dashboard, at some of the dashboards. Yeah, you want to go show?
Good, and now we go to the live part. So we have several instances of Prospect, and I'm now using the demo one, where we create accounts for people to play, people and organization to play around with. The idea is, the reason for now why we're not making it completely public for everyone to create an account is because we're still in the, let's say, piloting stage. So we would like to have a more, let's say, handheld use of the platform, but also more focused way of getting feedback. And so we've been working with solar home system companies to push the data to us or to pull the data and then go through the dashboards and then get feedback on the dashboards. And also being here in Nigeria, we started engaging with Nigerian mini-grid companies who started using Prospect to share their data and see how the dashboards are looking like, and then also giving feedback. Well, actually, me as a Nigerian mini-grid developer, I need to see this, and I would like to have a dashboard that looks like this. So we are in process of doing that. So having said that, I would still like to give you a general overview of the platform and how it works. And so the first things first is the documentation. And so even if you don't, come on MTN. Okay. So the way it works is even if you don't have an account and if you're logged in, if you're logged out, you have access to the documentation. And the documentation gives you an overview of the different data tables that we have. And if you click on, for example, meters, where's my phone? Let's put the phone maybe a bit closer to the, I don't know, maybe to the window. But it gives you an overview of the API documentation on how to exchange data. You can get example CSV files, but it also gives you an overview of each column header and the type of data that we are collecting. If it's blurred, if it's pseudonymized, if it's an auto-generated piece of information, and if it's required to be able to import it into Prospect. And so usually a company who would push data or someone who would build a connector, they would first go through the documentation to have a look at how our data tables are built, a bit what also Brianna showed with the graph. The second thing is the importing, and this is what I showed earlier. The way it works for us is that you can have like a different project. So you can create a project in case you have, for example, in case you're a company participating in the Nigerian Energy Program and in the DARES and in the UEF and in the something, then you might want to separate all your different projects so that you can share the data with different organizations. Because if you work for, let's say, a session for a project for the UEF, you might not want to share this data with the World Bank and vice versa. So this gives you the possibility to create different projects, and then you can decide with whom you want to share which data as part of which project. And so now, since we're in demo, we have a demo project. And you have sources and you have visibilities. And I will come back to both. So the sources, if you want to add a data source, you can add whatever you want. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you can select whatever you want to select. So let's say I'm using Spark meters, that I would like to get the Spark meter data. I would go for next, and then I would put my Spark meter access token and the API URL from Spark meter, and then Prospect will automatically connect to Spark meter and fetch the data from Spark meter. The other thing that I mentioned besides the sources are visibilities. And so with visibilities, you can select with whom you want to share the data. So for example, now I have this Spark meter data and I would like to share it with A2EI or with some other company. You can choose to select, for example, I only want to share the data from 2023 and not earlier, so you can select that here. And then you can also say, I want to I want to share only specific data with them. Let's say it's the REA, and so I don't want to share my payment data with the REA. Then I don't select, for example, the payment time series, but only the meters or only the grids. And then you can, for example, if you say grids, you can also select, okay, I don't want to share the GPS coordinates with the REA. I only want to share something else. So this gives you a very granular way in which you can decide what data you want to share with whom. So once you have imported data, you have decided with whom you want to share the data, you can also export the data. And exporting for now, in this part, it's the raw data, so you can see how many data points you have. And then you have the possibility to to download the files in case you want to double check something or you want to have your raw data. And on top of that, you have visualizations. And so these visualizations, the dashboards, they allow you to analyze and look at your data. So we have a couple of dashboards looking at, let's say, a country perspective and then a technology perspective. And so this is all fake data. Otherwise, companies would kill us. But for example, if you look at country, then you have, it will load at some point. Let me zoom in. Not zoom in the map, but zoom in the... And so something like the country dashboard allows you to give you, it gives you a visualization of your portfolio. So you can select your country. So if you want to have data only from Benin, then you could look at that. And if you want to have data from Nigeria, then you can look at that. And there are several ways of visualizing based on technology. And then there's certain, let's say, different visualizations. And usually it always follows, let's say, a pattern of macro to micro. So from large scale to portfolio perspective to a more individual system or connection perspective. And so, yeah, without going into all the different dashboards, this is a bit the idea. Voila. I think we can stop here just to give more time for questions. And I don't know if you want to...
I wanted to do a quick hackathon plug, but maybe we can start to take questions and I'll set up my laptop as it's happening.
Let's do that. So, questions.
Any questions in the room? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thanks a lot, Razvan and Brianna. I'm really glad that we are organizing this particular symposium in order to bring together initiatives like Prospect, the EnAccess Explorer, and other open source solutions to make sure we live up to the potential of open source technology moving forward. To me, and I believe many would agree, open source means transparency, right? But it also means collaboration and optimal use of the limited resources in the space that we operate, right? So there are lots of synergies or similarities that we are seeing between Prospect and the EnAccess Explorer, and there are a number of value. There are a number of points that can add value to what exists in the ecosystem. So I'd like to ask both of you, and maybe your colleagues within the Prospect team as well, if in the early days of conceptualizing and designing Prospect, you had a chance to go through the existing open source infrastructure of the EnAccess Explorer. You spoke about a data aggregator. You spoke about digital public good or digital infrastructure. You spoke about visualizing geospatial data. You spoke about aggregating data from multiple sources, which are things that we've been speaking about over the past, I don't know, like six plus years. And everything has been open sourced. And hoping that other community practitioners are able to utilize the existing infrastructure and build on it, like you've been doing, like for example, with the connectors, which is new and very much needed in this space. You spoke about visibility. We call it permissions. There is a permission system that we've been building, open sourced. There's a dynamic information system available as well, connecting different data sets in different resolutions, formats from different data providers. So I'd like to understand from you and other colleagues within Prospect whether you had the opportunity to go through the existing open source infrastructure and whether you identified the need to build something from scratch, or you were able to benefit from what exists. Thank you.
Any other question? Someone raise his hand up again.
Okay, if you take several, then I need to take notes because my memory is like Swiss cheese.
Yeah, let's just take one more and then we answer. Let's take this one.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Alex. So, sorry, I need to talk to the moderator. The first speakers, you didn't allow us to ask questions. I know you asked us to go to the Discord. I have a lot of app on my system, my phone, so downloading Discord is like adding more applications on my phone, so I didn't do that. So let me ask you, I could have asked them a question, so yes, let me ask on this one. Yeah, thank you very much. Just to add what Demery said, Prospect is, I'm an end user of most of the open source applications. So what we did to make sure that every opportunity we have in using most of the open source applications, it will be much more easier because there are a lot of open source applications. We rather use what will give us exactly what we need, just like what Demery said. So if, yeah, there's visualization, data aggregation, and transparency, but it's good to make it more friendly in a way that so that we are the end users, so that when we are working on using, right now from this symposium, there are a lot of open source data that I've seen, which are very interesting. So now I'm in a level or the stage of confusing my head, okay, which application is actually best for me? Because meeting them directly, which I started doing collaboration to see I'm working on a particular project or mini-grid. I want so for financial modeling, for energy profiling, for mini-grid, just like where I discussed with him, we discussed about interconnected mini-grid side, how we can integrate billing data into the open source application so that we can see how we can see flow of energy usage and also demand. So if you can also make it more simple, because the licensed applications, they are more simpler because it's licensed. But open source, just like what QGIS did, was kind of implicate what ArcGIS were doing, but QGIS is actually more, they give you the room to develop your own plugins to use to do most of your analysis. It's actually, Prospect is actually one, I've not used the Prospect before. This is the first time I'm seeing it. Sorry to say, but I find it also very interesting at the moment right now because of our implementation. So if you can just make it more friendly so that we can see how I can also consider another application. Thank you very much.
All right, that's all. So you answered the two questions.
Definitely. So I can start to answer this, and my answer would be, I am very excited to see you guys' presentation because I want to see exactly what you've been working on. I haven't, clearly a conference like this is needed because there's been a lack of communication. It seems to me, but I'm also new to the space. So yeah, I'm very excited to see what you guys have and then the ways that we can collaborate and meet the different needs or work together. We're very excited also to be doing more sharing data across the systems when it's appropriate. Do you have more to add on that?
Yeah, I think it's, on the one hand, Prospect is still relatively new. I know that towards the end of last year, it's a bit of a separate exercise, but there was a working group on, let's say, digital solutions that was created, and it's spearheaded by EnAccess, amongst others. And it also links a bit to your question that there's so many solutions out there, and when is it the right moment, or what do we use which solution for? Because we realized actually there are quite many solutions, but if you're a company, you don't really know what do I use when, and then what do I use if I'm a government, and what do I use, etc. And so I think EnAccess and also colleagues from Get Invest have been carrying out interviews and looking a bit at what is the landscape, what are the solutions out there, commercial and open source. And I think, I don't know if maybe at some point, Vivian, you will share some of that, or if it's not ready yet, I don't know what the latest stage is, but I think it would be interesting to hear what came out of that, because I can totally relate to the confusion of there's so many solutions and what do we use. And I think so we're also, both of us are relatively new to the to the prospect world. So I'm not sure if there was before some sort of, let's say, landscape assessment or analysis. In my very limited, because I'm also curious to see, I know the EnAccess Explorer version maybe 3 years ago, so probably you have done things in the meantime also. But to me, I think the core of Prospect is this integrations and connectors and bringing the data, which is at the, let's say, a lower scale than the EnAccess Explorer, which to me is very much like this country type of visualizing the data and the installations that are out there. But yeah, I agree that there's more, that there is a potential, and I think it also links to this loop that we mentioned yesterday, where there are more like M&E platforms, like more like Prospect, that actually collect the data from the individual systems, that then how do we close the loop for this data to flow into energy planning and tools like EnAccess Explorer.
Yeah, I also, my understanding is I will see. I'm very excited to see, but it sounds like there's a lot of focus on macro and planning and understanding at like a macro level what's going on. And we're really focusing right now on the micro of like, for this individual system, what are the payments and what are the what's the energy profile over time. So excited to see how those complement. To address what you were saying, yes, like we want to work more with individuals and understand much better exactly what do they need to make sure that we're actually building that. So maybe we can talk as well afterwards.
Can we take one more question? Yes.
Sorry, but one quick clarification, just to maybe clear the fog about Prospect. Is Prospect comes in usually once a system is installed. So Prospect is not to be used for planning. It's not to be used for sizing. It's not to be used for anything. Let's say the value added of Prospect comes once the mini grid is built, or once the solar home system has been installed, or the connection has been made, because then we can track it. But we are not there to do planning or sizing or modeling or anything. All of that we don't do.
Okay, one more question and we'll wrap it up. Answer the question. Okay. Vivian, I'd rather give it. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. I think my question is on how will the end product look like? Will you have like a one user interface that has all projects combined, or each user will have their own sort of instance where you visualize your clients and all those kind of things? And in that instance, if it's the former, what are the data sensitivities issues that you're looking at? Like, would you how do you plan to address that? Like, trying to see how best to simplify the process, or how will you convince the end users that you want to share their customers' information out there? And then the next question is there room for customization of the data inputs? Like, I assume each project looks at different entries, and also the dashboards. Is there room for customization and all that? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or
so
everything has to be standard.
Yes. So first thing, all identifiable information about customers, I believe all identifiable information would be about customers, but that is all pseudonymized within the system, so it can't get out. We don't store any identifiable information in the system. And then if I'm a company and I want to share my information with multiple different organizations, funding organizations, for example, or a governmental organization, I can choose for each table which fields I want to actually share. And so then we have these standardized dashboards, which maybe it relies on a field that you won't share. It means that dashboard is not going to load that particular field. but yes, and then you can change the fields that you share over time if you like, but it's very customizable in that sense. Yeah, while still allowing for some amount of standardization.
Okay, we have one more question, and then Vivian.
All right. So mine is I want to ask two questions. The first one is it double-ended? What I mean is this: let's say a utility company. There's one here in Abuja, Abuja Electricity Distribution Company. Let's say they decide to adopt Prospect. Now they have their end users, the consumers. They sell energy, electrical energy to them, and then they get paid for it. Now, if they are to adopt that is the utility companies, will it be double-ended? Will the end users have this access to this user interface as well as the energy providers? I don't know if you understand my question. Do you?
No.
I can try to answer. I can try.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Let's do one by one. How do you call it? Like small memory space for me. So the way it is, the prospect is not addressed to the household or to the. That's not our customer, so to speak. Prospect is primarily aimed at data providers. In most cases, these are the solar companies or the utilities. So let's say everything that we build and around it has kind of like this perspective of the data provider, so most often the companies. So it's not foreseen to have some sort of portal through which the let's say a utility client, you can check your own electricity consumption. But the way it is, the fact that you can, for example, download the Prospect instance, and if you have a Victron system at home, nothing stops you from adding your own Victron credentials, and then you can see your own solar system, for example.
But it would be a weird use case.
But it would be a fringe use case. This is not what the platform is aimed at.
So, okay, the last question is this. Now, we have a data problem in Africa, okay, specifically Nigeria. We have a serious data problem, database problem. So, for instance, now the utility that covers Abuja and some other states around, I'm telling you for a fact that some of their customers, they don't have the data or accurate data of their customers. So now they want to adopt Prospect. The Abuja Electricity Company, for instance, want to adopt Prospect. How would you go about getting the data of all their consumers? Because this is about database management, right? If I'm not wrong. So how would you plan on doing that?
So I think what we would do, what the role that Prospect would play, is to add visibility into where the data are not lining up. Like maybe there's a sale here, but we don't see any mobile money payment, or we saw that someone said that device 123 is a cook stove, but actually it looks like it's producing energy like a fridge, right? Something like this. So I think we would add visibility into the inconsistencies in the data, but we wouldn't solve those. Like we can't. It's out of the scope for us to try to solve inconsistencies. I hope that answers.
Yeah, I would just quickly speak as Raspan has brought it up. It's not really a question. It's just to detail on. Yeah, there's a working group that sit together in September last year, out of which there was a lot of like brainstorming out. There's so much digital tools, not only open source, also closed source. And often developers find themselves in the situation that you actually said, that which should I use? Which of these should I use? Should I go for the open source one? Should I go for this proprietary one, the other proprietary one? There's a miss. And often this leads to not using any of those, or using the wrong one. That's a bit the perception that we had, and based on that we decided and we would make a trial of making some surveys that have been performed with a couple of companies. We actually would be happy to do it with more, to get an idea what is needed. And so one outcome is we need a overview of what is actually available with a short, non-biased, non-commercial summary. So a summary which is not written by the providers in the commercial case, but by, we'll have to find out how to do that. And also do an interoperability assessment, both for commercial tools and it can also be commercial open source, no? I mean, open source and closed source tools. And Good Energies has committed to support this work, and we will actually kick off the work in the coming weeks to implement. And yeah, just wanted to say, and part of this would be, for example, interoperability assessments between Prospect and EnAccess Explorer, but also on a lot of other tools which are around, and pretty happy to get the crowd here, which is actually using and interested in this kind of tools, to contribute to this. So we will definitely reach out to you with more details. And yeah, just wanted to detail that. So, and yeah, EnAccess is leading that, but the idea is that's a stakeholder work where a lot of stakeholders can contribute with their experience and their interests.
That's great. While we're switching over, I want to give a quick plug for one of the hackathons that we have planned. So the Prospect, we're leading this one tomorrow. It's looking at health facility monitoring, so looking at electricity usage and access in clinics in Sierra Leone, and then we have all of this data, and we're asking people to help us figure out what is generator electricity, and what is grid electricity. It's an interesting problem, and I hope you can help us solve it. So.
All right. Thank you so much. Round of applause, please, for them. Thank you. It's good to practicalize these tools, and pretty much easy to see how it works. And I'm very engaging, I must say. But that's not the end. But before we move to the next session, I would like to mention today we are doing things a little bit different. For coffee breaks, everything is set up behind. So if you feel like you need to munch on something, please feel free to go behind to take something for yourself. But the session continues. We don't want to disrupt the session, but feel free. If you need to munch on something, stroll behind and get what you need while we move on to the next session. And someone mentioned about, I have too many apps. I don't want to download Discord to add to it. I mean, you can just do it on your web browser so that you save yourself much memory. So just go www.community.enaccess.org, and you can easily just join from there, so you don't have to download additional app on your phone, just in case you have insufficient space. All right. They've asked many questions to prospects. They've seen an avenue for collaboration. While we're here, how do we collaborate? That's what open source really is. So it's their own turn. We have also asked them more questions as they come to practicalize their own tool, the EnAccess Explorer tool. So ladies and gentlemen, please permit me to invite our next presenters from World Resource Institute, Dimitris Mentis, Akansha, and Douglas. The three of them will be making a presentation on EnAccess Explorer, the digital public good to deliver climate-friendly and viable energy transition. Interested? I also want to see, how this works. And of course, so also prospects can see the areas of collaboration on both tools and what is possible. Are we ready?
Yes, feel free to take your coffee and be back in maximum 2 minutes, if that's okay. Yeah. So we can set this.
They're not ready for coffee yet. When they're ready, they'll go and get. We don't want to lose them. Dimitris, help us. All right. Okay, while they are setting up, just a reminder in case people joining us online. No, coffee is this way. People are going outside. Coffee is the door behind. Dimitris, see what you have, of course. Dimitris. Coffee is that way. You sure you can get them back? All right. Our online viewers, please, a reminder in case you're just joining, please head on to Discord and join the open source EnAccess community, where the conversations and interactions will be going on. You can get that www.community.enaccess.org so that you can be able to join some of the conversations and make your comment as we go into the next session. Please let's not stay too long. Even though Dimitris has sent you guys away for coffee, but yeah, we have lost 30 minutes already, and we don't want to start without you. I'll come to you. I'm coming. All right.
It doesn't? Clara? It works? Can you please connect? The password? So while people are still coming, back, I'd like to go through a couple of slides. I know Akansa presented this briefly yesterday. Repetition is the mother of all knowledge, so I hope you don't mind. Are you with me? All right. Okay. So, yet another digital infrastructure. How many of you are familiar with GIS? Let me get some hands up. Like maybe 50% of the room, 40%. How many of you use GIS on a daily basis? 3 hands up. You don't use Google Maps every day? Yes? All right. It is a geographic information system. Maps. Imagine having an equivalent of Google Maps in the energy space, meaning you identify information related to energy, both energy demand and supply, in locations of interest. This is what we've been trying to create with the EnAccess Explorer, a digital public infrastructure to help deliver climate-friendly and viable energy transitions for everyone, especially the ones that are unserved and underserved. I don't think I need to convince any of you about the importance of integrated and inclusive energy planning. Akansa spoke briefly about the 3 main reasons that led us to the EnAccess Explorer. We need to treat demand and supply as equal. The majority of the geospatial solutions in this space have been focusing on the supply side. What is the cost-optimal way to provide electricity to unserved and underserved locations? There have been a few excellent initiatives like eGuide that have been focusing on the demand side. But we need to treat these 2 sides of the EnAccess equation as equal. Because if we don't understand aspects of demand and affordability from the bottom up, the supply strategies we are designing will not be viable, neither for consumers, whether these are households or institutions, healthcare facilities, education facilities, agricultural facilities, nor for the energy service providers, mini-grid developers, solar home system providers, clean cooking technology providers, etc. So we do need a platform which synthesizes granular information on both demand and supply and takes into account other criteria, other parameters which happen to be geospatial in nature, be it the global horizontal irradiation, the wind speed magnitude, power infrastructure, economic activities, etc. So that's the very first reason that led us to the EnAccess Explorer. The second reason, there is a need to reduce reliance on GIS and programming expertise for data and analysis users. As you saw earlier, all of you are utilizing GIS without even knowing that you're utilizing GIS, but maybe 40% of you have been trained in GIS systems. So how can we reduce the reliance on GIS and programming expertise for data and analysis users? And these users can be rural electrification agencies, it can be clean energy businesses, mini-grid developers, solar home system providers, it can be finance institutions, it can be development partners in the health, education, agriculture sectors with limited or no GIS capacity in-house, who should still be able to identify priority areas for energy interventions using this data-informed approach. But we need to think about the entire data value chain here. Speak about data users, we shall also speak about data providers, who need to deploy an open source dynamic information system in order to reduce software engineering costs. Open source means no subscription fees, no licensing fees. Data, however, and I made this distinction briefly yesterday, can be either open access or password protected in cases where there are data sharing related sensitivities. So briefly, these were the three main reasons that led us to the conceptualization, design, and development of the EnAccess Explorer. Our vision is to provide geospatial data and technology and create a future where both people and institutions have access to reliable energy services for achieving critical development outcomes on healthcare, education, agriculture, livelihoods. What is the EnAccess Explorer in a nutshell? It is the first open source interactive geospatial platform which synthesizes granular data on both demand and supply and enables stakeholders with different perspectives to identify priority areas for energy interventions. Why different perspectives? Because some stakeholders want to maximize profit, businesses. Other stakeholders want to focus on electrifying healthcare. Some on electrifying cooking. Others on electrifying agriculture. These different perspectives need to be accounted for. The platform functions also as a dynamic information system for data providers. This is a system that facilitates data management and data governance. For many audiences and use cases, first of all, planning agencies are utilizing the platform to improve the ways integrated and inclusive planning is carried out. Businesses, especially the ones that do not have this kind of market intelligence capacity in-house, are utilizing EA to identify new market opportunities. But we see even the larger businesses in this space benefiting from the platform because it saves them a significant amount of time when it comes to pre-screening candidate locations for their market interventions. Donors, finance institutions are utilizing EA to identify areas where their grants and investments will have the most impact. And finally, departments in the health, education, agriculture sectors, think for instance a health ministry, are utilizing EA to get an initial understanding of energy needs associated to development services. This in a nutshell. This is a sample for Uganda. We will share this with you later on. We'll go through a live demonstration. One point that I'd like to share, when we started a few years ago, our initial commitment, this is how little we knew, was reaching 15 institutional users. Today, we have exceeded 20,000 users that were previously left outside the energy planning equation, the energy planning conversations. Now they are equipped with a platform that enables them to generate analytics and to support data management and data governance. Thanks to its open source nature, we have exceeded in-kind contributions of about 15 million USD. I was very glad that, Matthias, you brought up yesterday the monetary benefits associated to the deployment of open source technologies. This is the amount of funding that would have been required if we were to rely on proprietary solutions otherwise. And this is based on a rather moderate assumption of 30 users per country per year. You can see that we have exceeded 20,000 users. I'll leave this. An encouraging statistic is that almost 1 out of 2 users of the EnAccess Explorer are women. Why is that encouraging? It should be the case, because this is not necessarily the share that we see in the various training activities and workshops we participate. So here we're talking about the importance of equitable access to software. Just for the Nigerians in the room, last year, REA recognized the partnership with WRI in the EnAccess Explorer as one of the top partnerships to transform the renewable energy space in the country. This is at country level. At regional/international level, the GEO for SDGs, which stands for Group for Earth Observations for Sustainable Development Goals, recognized the importance of this open source solution in achieving development goals. So this recognition came from this group, which included NASA, ESA, a number of space agencies, and over 100 governments. With that, I'd like to pause with the presentation and start with the online demonstration. Yes. All right. So this is the exercise all of you will be working on if the internet allows. You will need to go to EnAccessExplorer.org in your computers. If you don't have a computer, please join one of your colleagues. It's a very brief exercise, but we wanted to make this as interactive as possible. And we would like to see people that are not GIS experts benefiting from this particular initiative. Now, let me take you briefly through this, and you will be able to replicate following the instructions. So, EnAccessExplorer.org. You will click on Tool. Are you with me? Yes? You will click on Tool, and you will be directed to the Geography selection page. All right? You will select Nigeria. The same instructions are in your in the manual. All right. You will select Nigeria. Just a second. It comes in. And you will be redirected, or not redirected, you will be directed to the front end of the EnAccess Explorer. Remember, we have a front end of the application for data and analysis users, and we have a backend infrastructure for data providers. We'll go briefly through the backend as well. On the left-hand side, we have the customization panel. This is where you can add data. This is where you can utilize the platform's functionalities and features. Center of the page, the map of the select geography. A geography can be a country, but it can also be a smaller administrative division. It can be a state, it can be an LGA in the case of Nigeria, etc. And on the right-hand side, there is space for some graphs, which will start popping up once we add data and we carry out analysis. Just for this exercise, we will select a couple of data sets on the demand side. So you see how we group data on demand and supply, and we treat these two sides of the EnAccess equation as equal. Takes time to load, bear with me. If it doesn't load, you will get my computer. So we start with the demand side, population density. All right, we get the population density map for Nigeria. We go further down to social and productive uses, and we will select, for this exercise, healthcare facilities. Okay, sorry. Now you're able to see the healthcare facilities across the country. Once you start zooming in, you get more facilities popping out in your map. And then we switch to the supply side. We will select a couple of datasets on the supply side. One is on distribution. I know we have Alex here who is going to provide useful feedback on the distribution network. And we will select another dataset on energy resource availability, in this case, global horizontal irradiation. What happened now? Even though we have selected 4 datasets, we only see the global horizontal irradiation. This means that everything is hidden under it. This is typical in GIS systems. This is called overlay. We will switch to the legend. You're not able to see how I switched. To the there is this plus button, and under the plus button there is the legend. We go through this. And you're able to change the order the layers appear. So I can bring the distribution network on top of the global horizontal irradiation and the healthcare facilities on top of the global horizontal irradiation as well. We have only selected 4 datasets. 2 on the demand and 2 on the supply side. There are over 50 geospatial indicators that you can utilize, combine, in order to further refine your analysis. With just 4 datasets, even for the ones that are familiar with the location specificities. It's challenging to identify areas where access to energy shall be expanded. You are able to switch from the data view, right now we're in the data view, to the analysis view, here. The unit of analysis is 1 square kilometer. So for every square kilometer, you will get a different analytical output. What do we see in the map? Brighter colors indicate higher priority areas. Darker colors, lower priority areas. Priority based on what? Based on the datasets we selected on the fly as we speak. So if I remove healthcare facilities, the map, the prioritization map, got updated on the fly. I'll bring it back in. Darker colors, lower priority. The unit of analysis is 1 square kilometer. So this means that we get almost 1 million, because we have almost 1 million square kilometers in Nigeria. We get almost 1 million different analytical outputs across the country. Where shall we prioritize our interventions? We can refine our analysis through some basic GIS tools. So I'll switch to the legend. And let's start with the demand side. Let's say we are interested in electrifying underserved healthcare facilities. And we will play with the buffers. You can either utilize this slider and put it to, let's say, 10 kilometers, or you can edit these editable boxes. We will put it, yes. Proximity to healthcare, to healthcare facilities. So I will put the proximity to 10 kilometers, and you will see a buffer around each and every healthcare facility in the country. Now, let's look at facilities which are far from the distribution network. So let's say minimum distance from the closest distribution network, to be 4 kilometers. And let's look at areas where the potential for solarizing these underserved facilities is significant. So from the almost 1 million square kilometers that we had originally, we went down to 450. So half the country has been removed from this initial analysis. Again, a sample analysis. You can refine it based on your criteria. You can either spend days in zooming in, trying to identify the top priority locations. Remember, brighter cells, higher priority. You will click on this identifier. And there is a justification why certain locations shall be prioritized. This is not a black box kind of analysis that someone else developed in a static way and we have to go with it. This is based on our unique criteria. So this particular location prioritized. Why? Because of reason A, B, high population density, very close to healthcare facilities, significant far away from the closest distribution network, significant global horizontal irradiation. Where are we? State, LGA, world, and coordinates. Again, we need to spend days to identify the top priority locations. The platform will do this pre-screening for us. So we'll click on the top locations. Where is that? It's hidden because of the projection here. Let me move this a little bit. So do you see this, this button here? Yes. This will give you the top locations based on your criteria. And we click on one of them. And we understand what's going on in this particular location. So instead of spending days to identify the top priority locations, the platform will do this pre-screening for us. Now, you may be wondering what is actually happening on the ground. So for that, you can utilize the satellite imagery as a base map, and the satellite imagery is being updated on a daily basis to assess the situation on the ground. That's a tool for you to validate to an extent the situation on the ground. This is a pre-screening tool. This is not a pre-feasibility tool. You can change the opacity of your analytical output and zoom in on the ground in order to understand whether this particular location is a good enough candidate for expanding access to energy services. So it can get very granular. Now, I'll zoom out. I'll share one more feature, and then I will come back to you. Basic base map. We'll go back to our legend. We will clear all filters so we can see the entire country. Now, not all stakeholders are interested in identifying priority locations at this level of granularity. Some may want to identify priority states, priority LGAs, priority wards. So instead of having your unit of analysis being at 1 square kilometer, you're able to say prioritize states. Based on what? Based on the criteria you selected. So this aggregation is happening on the fly as we speak. Aggregation is easy. Disaggregation can be challenging. So here we are aggregating. Here we aggregate at state level, at LGA level, and we can aggregate at ward level. We can aggregate even at village level if you have boundaries of the villages. Again, just to demonstrate that this is happening as we speak, I will remove the healthcare facilities, and you will see a different analytical output now at ward level. If we are not interested in a country-wide analysis, you are able to, again, do you see the symbol, this planet symbol? You can click on it. I'm going to do this. And we'll select, let's say, Kaduna. So we'll get a prioritization map only for that state. You can get a prioritization map for the LGA. So everything else has been excluded, again, based on the criteria we selected. Back to you for the exercise. I hope internet is decent enough. The first 3 who are going to complete the exercise are going to get an EA t-shirt from Akansa. So over to you. If you have questions, Douglas, Akansa, and I can help. And again, if you don't have a computer, please join your colleagues. Is that a question, or have you finished? Say again? All right. Did you give the t-shirts? The exercise is in the hands-on. How many of you have completed the exercise? 1, 2? All right, so you're getting your t-shirts for sure. And then, have you completed, Matthias? Yes, yes, you completed. All right, very good. Excellent. So this gives us a bit time to go through the backend infrastructure. Wisdom, how much time do we have? We don't have? 2 minutes for the backend. 5 minutes. Fantastic. Great. Backend. Where is the backend? All right. So many of us hear the term backend, and we think about hundreds of lines or thousands of lines of programming code. Is that the case? You have a question on the front end. Yes.
Yeah, Dimitris, thank you for that wonderful exploration of the energy access tool, right? My name is Princess again, co-founder Trifinity Intelligence Consult Limited. So this is where my concern comes in, because I supported the integrated energy access tool for Nigeria, IC for all supported, yeah. And I recall that after Freya did the geospatial mapping and all that. So I recall that when we were done, so when you go back to that tool, you see that the data doesn't marry each other. For example, you can click on Lagos and you want to know, because I'm in the clean cooking space, right? So you want to know the hardest to reach areas where you can deploy clean cooking interventions and all that. But the numbers you are seeing is not the numbers. It doesn't marry with what MBS reports. So my question to you is this. Yeah, you said you're using is that Google Earth or GIS or, great. So my question is what fills into your data to make it, to give it a data integrity? Yeah.
Excellent question. So the difference between this particular initiative and other initiatives in this space is that this one is locally co-developed, locally co-owned. So this is not just the World Resources Institute with partners that have developed this, and after 6 months or after a year, the platform becomes irrelevant, outdated, right? This is something that is developed in close collaboration, and there is at least a 5-year-long technical support committed to the local partners. Now, we come to the point of making sure the data is timely. And for that, we cannot ask a single stakeholder in the various geographies where this platform is active. How do we deal with this issue? We form and establish in-country EA working groups, which are tasked with the sustainability of this particular initiative. Douglas, you could speak about the example of the working group in Douglas. You could speak about the example of the working group in Kenya. So you have the Ministry of Energy being the directorate of the working group, and then you have various contributing members. And these working groups convene on a frequent basis to exchange data in a standardized format. And we come back to the backend infrastructure. In order to keep this system maintained with minimal resources, you need to have an easy-to-use backend infrastructure. And you need to be able to assign roles and responsibilities to the various data providers. Remember the third reason that led us to the Energy Access Explorer. You need to deploy an open-source dynamic information system for data providers. Now, the data providers are not just energy stakeholders. It can be the Bureau of Statistics. You talked about the Bureau of Statistics. How many have engaged with the Bureau of Statistics? In various countries, the Bureau of Statistics is one of the key contributing members of the Energy Access Explorer working groups. Health ministries, ministries of agriculture, development organizations that focus on cooking, as you mentioned. In the case of Kenya, we collaborate with the Clean Cooking Association of Kenya, the Clean Cooking Alliance, to expand the platform and include data and use cases focusing specifically on cooking. So this is a very valid point, and this is one of the main reasons why such platforms have become outdated and are not longer in use. One of the points that we mentioned yesterday, and I'll stop there, is that local ownership and sustainability go hand in hand. You cannot have these platforms sustained if they're not locally owned. Yes. Now, to the backend, briefly, and we can follow up. This is the data management and data governance system of the Energy Access Explorer. This is where you are able to add data and metadata in the system. So you want to add data on access to different cooking fuels. You will do it here. How? You're in Nigeria, geography, you're in Nigeria, add a data set. Do you want to get the entire database at the click of a button? You don't need to maintain this elsewhere. What is metadata and metadata standards? each data set needs to be accompanied with specific information. What is the source? What is the methodology? What is the date of content? What's the citation? Are there any cautions, etc.? So you, as a user, can decide whether you want to select this data set for your analysis or not. There is also a user management system, and I think you refer to it as a visibility, I think, system. We refer to it as data governance and permissions. So you are able to assign roles and responsibilities to various data providers and data users. So you can say someone from the health ministry, you are only able to add data on the electrification status of healthcare facilities. And you are able to view this data. But it's the directorate of this particular initiative that can approve and say whether this data set goes to the publicly available interface. Yes. So there is a data management system and there is a data governance system where you assign roles and responsibilities. Data management, I'll say this and then I'll pause, happens at different levels. And data governance at national, but also at subnational level. So there is now a request from the Lagos state to develop a customized version of the EnAccess Explorer just for the state. Instead of spending a significant amount of time building this from scratch, you can utilize the system, which we call Paver, because it paves the way, which automates the various data processes. So you can get a preliminary version of Lagos state in no time.
Okay, Dimitris, time?
One last thing, we have Naomi here. I hope you have had the chance to meet with Naomi. There is online peer-reviewed training material. If you don't have the chance to travel to the energy modeling platform, to the summer schools, please go through the online training material. EnAccess Explorer is one of the multiple tools that are introduced in an easy-to-follow manner. You will also get a certificate of completion. Thank you.
All right. Demetrius, before I let you go, his hands have been up for a long time, so let me just take his question and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, Demetrius, I know you're expecting my question. So, excellent platform. Yes, I've went through the platform severally because EnAccess Explorer has actually made my work easier. So, when you introduced me to the platform, I went through it because I've done several site identification, most of analysis, identification of POEs, and also health facilities that are away from the grid. So what you guys did was to summarize most of the work. You know, Nigeria, it's not easy to get a lot of data sets. And just imagine I'm using 2 different applications, almost 3, to get site identifications. I use different sources of data, agriculture, population council, and health to get the exact details of a particular community if they ask me to identify of this community. So what I want to ask is which Internet Explorer make it more and more easier, and also creating a buffer to know the off-grid community, creating a buffer with a particular health facility to know if they are off-grid or not off-grid. I was thinking if you have, because I tried to look at distribution transformers within, I know it has a lot of layers. When you have a lot of data sets, it makes the platform look very slow, I guess, at the back end. So distribution transformer also help in identifying off-grid communities, because when you also create a buffer of 1 kilometer buffer within a distribution transformer, it tells you within this 1 kilometer buffer, it tells you that this community is actually off-grid, or we are recommending the community for intercontinental grid or grid extension. So the platform is actually good, and also indicators for the feeders, 3311. Sometimes it's good to just say 33 is green. Indicator also gives a sharp visual of the presentation, whoever that technical person that is going there who's going to do that. So I just like a contribution to what you did. And at the back end, try to get more information from other health population can, so that it make the more robust, more interesting. Because at the moment, even REA won't want to use any other person open source rather than, because this exactly defined all the projects. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What you are seeing online is essentially what's available, what's been made available in the publicly available interface. We call it production environment. There is also a password-protected environment with information that has been added by our colleagues from REA. I don't know if we have Aisha today, or she will be joining later, with additional indicators. So transformers are there, substations are there. I'm checking here data from YOLA, Discos. But of course, it takes a click of a button to move data from the password-protected environment to the production environment. As you can see here, have the deployment status. See it here, deployment status. And this is password-protected, but at the click of a button, you can make this publicly available. This is now up to the working group. Currently, it's REA. Would like to expand this in Nigeria to decide what is made available in the publicly available, what's in the public interface, right? Now, how do we identify areas which may be connected? Either through proxies, for instance, nighttime light intensity, proximity from transformers, distribution lines, substations, etc., or through metered data if this information is available. So once, the beauty about this platform is that once you add a data set, the prioritization that we worked on earlier is updated on the fly. So you don't need to update any analytics in the backend because everything is happening in your browser. Yeah.
Okay. Last question, so we can move very last. You?
Okay. How do something like interconnected mini-grids? Because there are some communities where there are infrastructures on ground, but no supply. So how can EA, figure out such? Then number two, for clean.
Can you please repeat how it can figure out?
What's it called? EA Energy Access Explorer.
Yeah.
How can we use that to figure out such communities instead of actually getting to the place? Like for discos, I really think some discos are supposed to be here for this program. So it helps to we have a better understanding of what we are talking about. Then also for clean cooking, that's quite vast, even than energy access. What are we actually doing? Then for health is something that is really out of we are nowhere yet in the health sector. How can we marry that? Like now, EA is in collaboration with REA. How about incorporating our health sector into this platform?
Excellent.
Then for the clean cooking too.
Excellent question. So for mini-grid developers / utilities, or in this case REA, overseeing the development of mini-grids in the country, you can utilize the platform in two ways. And actually, last week we had a webinar with AMDA, the African Mini-Grid Developers Association, speaking exactly on this. You can either identify opportunities for or areas where new mini-grids shall be deployed based on the criteria you select. So that's one way. The other way is that the various mini-grid developers have proposed already specific sites, and REA scores these sites based on the criteria they select. So both are feasible with this structure. On expanding EAE in Nigeria to include data and use cases focusing on cooking. There are some limited data on access to clean cooking fuels. A lot more can be done. It's a matter of unlocking resources from donors in this space to expand this platform. But again, instead of developing something from scratch, we are able to utilize the existing open source infrastructure and expand it in the same way we did with the Clean Cooking Alliance in Nepal and in Kenya. They said, okay, there is an existing infrastructure. We're not going to build one from scratch, but we'll focus specifically on clean cooking. We will leverage this platform and we will minimize significantly the software engineering costs associated with the development of a new geospatial platform.
Okay.
So if such a request is an official request is put together by in-country stakeholders, we would be happy to take this request to one or more of the donors and do the work. That's a good point. So solar was just an example. There are several other indicators there. Hydro, wind. Someone was speaking about wind yesterday. Several more indicators. This was just a sample. Hopefully you will be able to play with the platform, go through the training material, reach out to the team. If your organizations can put together an official request, we would be happy to take this forward as we've been doing in other geographies. Thanks.
All right. Please, round of applause for Dimitris.
And Takansa and Douglas.
Yes, and Akansa. And thank you so much for the entire team from EnAccess Explorer. Thank you. Hope that demonstration was really helpful. I like the questions. When I get many questions, I know it means people are following and they want to learn more. They are still around. You can meet them after, maybe during lunch, to ask more questions. Like, as I've always said, you can also add your questions or contribution on the Discord forum, just to follow up on that. And just to correct, the link to get to the Discord I said before is community.oasis.org. That's the correct link, not community.enaccess.org. So OASIS is OSEAS.org. That's ORG. So community.oasis.org. You can easily get to the Discord channel right from your browser. Okay, we have some more time, so we'll quickly move to the next session where we also... Something important? Okay. Can we give that to everyone that asks questions? There was a criteria? Okay. How do we give them? Okay. Just keep on his seat here, the first seat, yes. No, give. All right. Okay. Are we done? All good?
Well, we need to do the criteria.
Okay.
One request, please, to our winners. Would like you to take a picture of you wearing your T-shirt and post it on social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, and tag EnAccess, EnAccess Explorer, hashtag EnAccess Explorer, hashtag, remember that, and tag WRI Energy and WRI Africa. We'll be grateful. Thank you so much.
They have asked me to ask you, is it today? Okay. Later? Okay, tomorrow. All right, let's keep moving to the next session. Thank you so much, EnAccess Explorer, for that gift. So the next session we'll quickly call, it's on offgridplanner.org. And I can see Gregory Ireland is already ready. So I will yield the mic to him quickly to introduce us to this next tool called offgridplanner.org. You ready? Okay, you want to keep it here?
Okay. Do we have one here? Should be duplicated, yeah. Okay. Okay. Hi everyone. I'm Gregory Ireland. You may have heard from me yesterday. I'm a EnAccess researcher working with the Rainer Lemoyne Institute in Berlin, as well as the University of Cape Town in South Africa. I am South African, but I live in Berlin at the moment. So today I don't have any free t-shirts for you. I just have open source software and good vibes. So let's have a look. And this is not going to be a full training session. We will be planning to do a much more in-depth training session in Abuja later this year. So reach out to us if you're interested to join, and we'll see what we can do. Probably fourth quarter, we haven't finalized the date yet. So this is just a bit of a teaser. So yeah, it's part of the People Sun project for optimizing off-grid electricity supply systems in Nigeria. And today we'll be showing you the offgridplanner.org free online off-grid planning tool. So if you go to offgridplanner.org without no www, you can sign up there, and then you'll need to verify your email. Sometimes it goes into spam, so just make sure you check there as well. So yeah, what is the purpose of this tool? So it's an online, freely available tool for planning off-grid energy supply systems, as well as their distribution grids across rural Nigeria. We aim to reduce required site data collection, also by using an integrated map system and pre-calculated default values. So how's this different to many other tools that look like Homer or things like that? So number one, we have much more detailed demand estimations using large survey data. The survey data itself is also freely available, and there'll be links later where you can get that. We did more than 5,000 surveys across rural Nigeria. Yeah, so it also includes distribution grid layout estimations and solar home system candidates. And it has many different advanced customization options, even though it tries to include best possible default values. So you can start off without having to collect mountains of data, etc. It's also entirely open source, the code and the platform. All of the sub-tools and modules it uses are also open source. So they can be used and developed for free, and hopefully to support transparency and flexibility. Yeah, so there's mainly 3 different models that were developed by a few different teams, including myself at the RLI. We also partnered with TU Berlin, many different stakeholders in Nigeria, and some project developers. You can go over there to get the code. We will probably update the link and merge many of our different development trees to make it much cleaner and easier to use. Yeah, so I'll quickly just mention the more open data that we have. So we collected 5,000 surveys across Nigeria, including households and enterprises. And with this, we've modeled electricity demand profiles with many of the different characteristics that we included in our surveys. We specifically surveyed people who already do use electricity, so not to try and survey people who have never used electricity before. So I'll get into a little bit more of the demand estimations later if we're interested, but I think we probably don't have time to get into it now. But please go over there. The data is free and available to use. It's anonymized so that you don't get the actual GPS locations, but there's many other geospatial covariates that are included to help with your analysis. So we use RAMP, or the Remote Area Profile Modeling System. This is also, for us, a bit of a success story in open source software, that many of the functionalities that we needed for our project have now actually gone back into the RAMP ecosystem to make that more sustainable, and many other people have used it. Yeah, so RAMP basically simulates high resolution electricity demand profiles for many different customer or user types that you might specify, including all of the different appliances they have, their power usage, their time of use, randomization, etc. Yeah, so we're busy with the publication on how we did the demand modeling for this project soon, so that should be available probably, hopefully the end of this year, but maybe more likely the start of next year. Yeah, so I do have much of this set up as well online, but I was trying it earlier for internet and it was a little bit too dodgy, so I will not do a live demonstration here, but I can show you how some of the platform works as well. So first you start off with, so once you've logged in, you'll get, it can even offer you to give you a free, already set up sample site, so you can just kind of see how it goes and you don't have to go and specifically find it. But you'll kind of first start up with some basic data. How long do you expect the project to be? How many days do you want to simulate in your project? Give it a name and choose interest rates, etc. And then here is an example of using the platform, using OpenStreetMap data. You go to any part of Nigeria and select the area, and then it will select and identify all of the buildings that are available on OpenStreetMaps. If your area does not have OpenStreetMap data, you can quickly switch on the satellite imagery, and then you'll unfortunately have to manually select the buildings. We're thinking about including other data sets like Google, Maxar, etc., to have more building footprint data. But right now it's OpenStreetMap. There's been a lot of great work already done in Nigeria to map many different communities around the areas, as well as the specific types of users that exist there, like public services, enterprises, etc. And to go and actually select them, you can then go and click on any one of these users that you've identified, and then customize them to a specific consumer type. So we have 26 different enterprises that are currently available for you to select, as well as public services like schools, hospitals, clinics, and places of worship. What we've also added is advanced functionality here to be able to add specific large productive loads. So because it's impossible for us to guess exactly how many mills or threshers or other heavy users exist in a specific enterprise, we don't guess that for you. You will then need to add that, because this can have a very drastic effect on the total energy consumption. So we're not going to guess and say, on average, 1.5 mils or something like that. It's too arbitrary, and the results can have too much of an impact. So we give you estimates of the other appliances that are typical in these enterprises, like say it's a bar or a restaurant or a drink stand, like what other appliances do they have? But we don't estimate the very large loads directly for you, but you can then add them as many as you want. So yeah, for the household energy demand, we have a few different options where, because we went to many different regions in Nigeria, we have some pre-made options for you that combine a community profile for households, including a certain number of that community to be assigned to each of the different consumption categories. So we modeled 5 different consumption categories from very low to very high. I won't get into too many details here unless we have interesting questions about it later. And the publication is forthcoming on that. And you can also customize this. If you don't like our estimates, you can then say exactly how many of that community you wish to have in the certain consumption categories. And then if that's also not enough for you, you can then set a specific value. So you want to make sure that your profile reaches an exact peak kilowatt range or a kilowatt hours per year number. You can then calibrate your profile towards that. You might have like other data from another site that says it's exactly this many kilowatt hours, and you want to test our system on that. You can then fix it rather than trying to fiddle with the profiles to make it match exactly to yours. So in the grid design, we have many different characteristics that you can include within it. So for the distribution cables, connection cables, poles, etc., you can customize the values of each of those components. And we've tried our best to make sure that these defaults are at least useful. Obviously, depending on your situation, depending on the style of design you use, these might change. But these are, from our research, close to at least usable. And yeah, so I will skip the solar home system part for now. Then this is kind of just a brief overview of how the grid optimization works. So first, you identify all of the users using the map tool. And then depending on how many connections you're allowed per pole, it uses something called k-means clustering, which then of all of your users, it finds or a guess of the optimal position of where all the poles should go. Like this, so the different colors are the different clusters, and then it puts the pole in the center of those clusters. And then connects each of the customers to that pole, and then uses a minimum spanning tree to connect all of the poles together. And then based on reality, you can't necessarily just have infinite length of each of the lines. So then we introduce intermediate poles in between those. We also then try to estimate an ideal location for the powerhouse. So we use basically it tries to find where the center of the load on average would be. And this is just an estimate. In reality, you might not be able to put your powerhouse there. You can then manually select in the tool that you say, my powerhouse must be exactly here. Maybe you've done some other analysis. You know your solar array is going to be over here. You have existing diesel generation, etc. You can then fix that to put somewhere else. Yeah, and then here's an example of, you may have seen it yesterday, where it's quite possible that not everyone in the community is going to be ideally electrified using mini-grid systems. So we then try to identify which are the candidates that are above a threshold value that will be too expensive. You can still force these to be connected if you wish, but it'll increase the total cost of the grid. And then you can have combinations of both systems within a specific community. And here we can also see an example of the grid optimization algorithm. And you might notice that this maybe looks a little bit unrealistic, that in reality, it's more often going to be going along the roads or avoiding specific buildings. This is functionality that we have not yet added. However, in some of our benchmarks, we found that it's still pretty close in terms of the total estimate of the distribution grid, which we feel is still much better than just guessing 2% of the total value or 10% of the total value. This is much closer, even if it's not perfect. So then in terms of the energy supply system, this is optimized using another open source framework called UMOF. So it's the Open Energy Modeling Framework. This is also open source and pretty well maintained and used by many people around the world. The solar irradiation time series is found for your specific location that you've chosen using the ERA5 database. And we use the pvlib Python library for the PV output. Also, this is all openly available. And then, as you've seen before, there's many different other options in terms of the different technology costs and the different components of those costs for all the different options, all of which are customizable for you. And then here's a little example where you can select which of the different technology options you wish to include. Often people might be interested with diesel or without, PV batteries, etc. And we also allow for an energy shortage to be included, but not only just a total energy shortage, we also have limitations of in a specific hour, what is the total shortage? Because if you say my grid can have 10% energy shortage over the whole year, what ends up happening is you have many days where it's just almost zero or very little, which is an extremely terrible service for your users, even if on average for the whole year it's only a few percent. So we think that's quite useful. And then these were just some backup slides in case it didn't work. And then we have many different metrics. So once you then optimize your system, you'll run it and it'll run in the back end of our server and it'll optimize the results. And then it'll show you what our estimate is of the best supply system to supply that load. And it'll tell you the total cost, it'll tell you how much solar, how much batteries, how much diesel is used, etc. What is the fuel cost, and all of these types of things. And then you can go through the full time series and several different charts to look at the breakdown of the levelized cost. We also have a very basic estimate of theoretical CO2 savings and a Sankey diagram that kind of brings some of it together. Some of this might be not that interesting to you, but we're rather giving you too much than too little. And you can also download the results to analyze them in other software, etc. And then go back and change some values and recalculate it, etc. Yeah, so I think that's the quick version. So what is coming next? So one of the things that is still part of the project is that we'll be doing specific site analysis using our tool. But I think it's much less interesting for us just to pick random ones and say that we think these are interesting. If you guys know of any specific sites that you're looking at that you maybe have interest in or data, please let us know and chat to us, and then we will use our tools alongside you to actually investigate these as a test sort of pre-feasibility kind of study. We find much more buy-in when people actually know about the place or the grid, or there's already some plans to do things in that area. We're always looking for measured data to try and calibrate and update our models. Demand modeling is extremely difficult, especially from survey data. You can have very high error rates, and calibration data can help that. Can't always fix it, but it's still quite useful. And as we know, that data is like gold to many people, and many people don't like to share it. We're happy to sort out NDAs or any kinds of things where we would never release the data ourselves. You can also give us anonymized data or aggregated data. Anything is really useful. And again, we'll be having the full hands-on training coming on later this year. So please reach out to us if you're interested in joining that. It's most likely to be in Abuja in the fourth quarter of this year. We're also still developing online training courses. I think a couple of you said that you may have joined a previous online demo of this. That is just a demo again. The actual hands-on training will get you all logged in, will get you all working, and you'll go through a full example. And if you have any questions, we can make sure that we help you get through it. And not just kind of leave you guys on your own, but we will still have also online training materials coming soon, where if you are motivated and interested, you can then go through it yourself. Please also give us your feedback, and I'm trying to end soon so I can get some feedback from you guys. And please don't just be nice. If there's something you like, let us know, but don't just say, oh, it's great, thanks, and then no one uses it. Tell us why you would not use it, or tell us what is missing. Don't just be nice because you maybe have to see me later on. We're very open to very critical feedback, because I find that with many of these tools, they are developed and they get like 95% of someone's needs, but the 5% is what mattered, and then no one uses it. We're trying to prevent that. We work for you. We want to try and actually solve these problems. We don't just want to make pretty tools that no one uses. So please do be critical and see how we can work together. And again, we'll be updating the GitHub repo. And then please reach out to us for collaboration. You're welcome to use the code as it is, or you can work with us to try and develop specific features or customize it to your use case. And then this was done for Nigeria, but almost all of the methodologies are completely applicable to any other country. And we're looking forward to extending that and working with any of you guys further. So yeah, thanks a lot. If you have any questions on the specific things, let me know. Otherwise, I'm hoping to get some time for some critical feedback. Cool, thanks a lot. I'm not sure who was first.
First question.
So, because you asked for critical feedback, this is more of a comment to all the other speakers. Can you show your last slide? Yeah, just that one, the logos. Look, I would like to really make a remark on the free. When it was called free and open source software, it was free as free from jail and not free as free lunch. It was because you could look at the code. It cost a lot of money for these things to do. You mentioned Python. I don't see Python there. So it's very easy to credit the people who give you money, but you also have to give credit for all the people as open source developers who develop these tools for you, and it includes for all of you. Otherwise, it will be lost. You don't know that you really need Python for this to work, and then you should also not be bothered if somebody else uses your package and not give you credit, which means that eventually your project will be also forgotten. So the open source works with credit. It is not free. It has cost a lot of money. It also needs this credit, and it is very easy to miss it, but it's also very easy among the open source community to give it. And it's not only money that transfers value, there are all other tools, and I think I made my point. So,
thank you. Very well said.
Thank you.
You'll notice I didn't even put my own logo on here. Yeah.
Thank you very much. From what you just shown, I think this is the third of this type of project I've seen in Nigeria. Even none of them has come to fruition, but I think what I would like you to include in this is a schematic diagram. Your output, let it have something like that schematic diagram when everything is done, please. Okay, please. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so please let's from the output of the project, I would like you to include schematic diagram to be there. Also, single line diagram can also be incorporated. Like I mentioned, talked to Dimitri earlier, we are moving towards energy mix in Nigeria. I mean, in total. So, and then the current area we're working on now is small and medium hydro. So I would like you to also incorporate this because RA is going fully into that, and I'm one of the team working on that for Nigeria. So I just let me chip down here. Maybe that one can help. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
One
last question.
Maybe one more, and then I'll answer that one.
Thank you for your presentation. I wanted to find
Maybe just speak up a little bit.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Is there like a system for geothermal energy? And also, how can we get the feedback and then the feedback and the feedback? How do you get your feedback? So we need to have the link to the survey also, if you can make it available.
Yes.
Thank you very
So
much.
I believe that all of the slides will be shared freely. Also, if you go to offgridplanet.org, we'll be updating that soon to try and make sure that everything links to everything. So you can find it there in a one-stop shop. At the moment now, I think it might not be yet linked, but you can get them from the slides. And then in terms of specific technologies, so like hydro and geothermal, those are relatively easy for us to add, but the difficult thing there is actually getting data for it, especially something like geothermal. And for something like geothermal, we find that it's quite rare that is used in an off-grid, mini-grid context. It has theoretically been done, but most of those plants are much larger scale, centralized generation projects. So we haven't focused on that, and it's so site-specific that 99% of the time, if you'd go to a community, you'd say there's no geothermal available. Hydro is a little bit more interesting because it's a bit more widespread. And we've done quite a bit of work in the DRC on hydro. That's again easy to add, but difficult to get good data for it. And then the question on schematics and single line diagrams, etc. That is, I think, a little bit further away from our scope and target market. We're more on the pre-feasibility side. Again, we've tried to minimize site visits. We've tried to minimize data collection. But if you really do actually want to build something, you have to go there. So that kind of level of detail of data is it's always required. much of the work that we do at the higher level is just to see if they're interesting at all. Like many of them you can rule out because they're just not really going to work for many other reasons. But developing a full single line diagram, developing a full schematic of the whole grid, of the whole system, that's kind of on the other end of the scope. So I think we're still at the top. We've got like Energy Access Explorer, which can find interesting places. Then with that, you can use ours and see, is it actually interesting in the specifics? But then when you want to get to the actual project development stage, you're going to need to get an army of engineers that will make that for you. I think it's very difficult to automate that. Maybe one more question?
Yeah, we can take two more and then we call it a day. All right, I'll take one from him and I'll take one from.
Thank you very much for your nice presentation. I'm actually raising this question based on what you mentioned about the feedback. When 95% of the stuff work, but the 5% is what you're so concerned about. For example, you mentioned about the purpose is to reduce the number of site visits. So it's actually a pre-visibility kind of tool, so to speak. I've actually been somewhere where we're planning like a mini grid. So what we did was to use the normal GIS and actually put like a pin on the streets to measure the distance where the pole's supposed to be and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, we can get the number of poles, the cables length and stuff like that. But in this case, you use like a K-mean clustering. Yeah, so I'm just wondering, that kind of thing optimized. So am I saying, okay, this is a cluster, can connect like this, but in the real sense, if you go to those locations, it might be maybe like a river or maybe a house or something.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, so if I have this at the back of my mind, yeah, exactly. So if I have this at the back of my mind, I want to use it for predictability. I know in my head, okay, use K-mean for this. I'm like, is it really realistic, or should I have to go back to my normal using pin to? So I just wanted to clarify that part. Yeah.
So do not use this grid layout to build a real grid. This is just an estimate. So and also with trying to figure out like roughly, is it going to be 2% of the cost? Was it going to be 20% of the cost? That can make quite a big difference in your total cost of your system. And this, you can get most of the answer to that based on just how far away your people are from each other. Is it very dense or is it very sparse? So it's just to estimate to see is it worth it or not. And the other thing that allows us to do is to estimate if certain users are much more suitable for standalone systems like solo home systems. Without having at least some estimate of the grid cost, we can't determine which ones would be suitable for that. So that again just gives you a total idea of what percentage roughly of the people do we think will connect to the grid versus the solo home system. I'm not going to say exactly which ones. So you would still need to go and do that kind of work. But I mean, it is interesting feedback to hear that if this is the kind of tool that is needed, then we'll need another project that looks at that specifically, one that can actually go for the detailed design, because I don't think anyone's really doing open source detailed design, because I think this is probably, many of us see it as a higher impact. We get a limited amount of funds, and then we try to reach a broader audience, but maybe that is the kind of feedback that where we should focus next. So thank you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you for a very interesting overview. So I'm actually impressed by the amount of data that you showed about Nigeria. And I had a project before, and getting accurate data was very difficult. So my question is, I know how Nigeria is. I've lived in different parts of the country, and sometimes getting the correct data is very difficult. So I wonder how you get the data that you base your model upon, because your model is going to be as good as the accuracy of the data that you have. Especially in the rural areas, you can get all the maps, but then you don't know how many people live there, what kind of energy do they need. And so I'm really, just for certainty case sake, how do you really verify the accuracy of the data, and how do you get this data? Because it was difficult for us to do.
Yeah, it is very, very difficult, especially on things like population data. It can also be quite a political topic. We've once even shown before our estimates of population data across countries, and it can be very political, especially if you're showing totals of specific LGAs or specific states, because that can be linked to political seats in office. So we try to actually avoid doing that at that level. But at the end of the day, if you really need to know exactly how many households are in a place, you have to go there. If it matters, if it's the difference between 300 and 312 households, that kind of detail, you have to go there. Even a satellite image, it might be from a few years ago, but sometimes buildings move. Often people can be a nomadic in nature as well, or some of the buildings are not actually households. They might be a structure for livestock or for grain or for other farming activities, etc. Cool. One more question. Good question. Very difficult to fix without going there.
Actually, my question became two. I'm sorry for that. The one you might have said it. I was a bit distracted at parts of your presentation for some obligations, but is there a reason, because I just was triggered by the surveys you said that you based on households and so on that already have consumption. You did surveys. Is there a reason, and is there a reason why you went for surveys and not for measured data? And did you cross-check them with measured data, like the results from your survey, cross-checking them with actual measurements? That's the one part of the question. The other one which came to my mind was when you said you use in the first very high-level first step EnAccess Explorer, then you go for the off-grid planner to get a bit more detail, and when you already then decide I will really implement, then I make the detailed design where I agree you can't like use a default tool to make the grid design based on geospatial solutions. You need to go on the ground as well. Is there like any ideas of interoperability, like the results you had from your analysis in EnAccess Explorer, then importing already this pre-analysis to off-grid planner, and from there then to the tool of your choice to do the actual grid planning, system design, and so on? I mean, from my own experience in mini-grid design, I know this repetitive efforts in redoing these designs and so on, every time a bit more detailed, could be streamlined if you have already the results in the right format from the former steps.
Yeah, good question. So I think that is what's be quite interesting to chat about in the other days today of interoperability. We have a few sessions on that. At the moment, you can download the data and it shows you the demand profile, shows you the results, it shows you the locations, or gives you GPS coordinates. But it's not like you can just drag that into QGIS or drag that into something else. We haven't got to that level, which I think that might be easier than it sounds. Some of it's more difficult, some of it's easier. That's a good question. And then on the surveys, yes. We did hope to get measured data as well to then cross-validate and calibrate, but it's maybe I'm just very unlucky, but I've never managed to get this data. Apparently some people came to me after and said, oh no, we can maybe give you something. But it's very difficult. We even did have project partners that I won't name that are project developers that have data and were unwilling to share it with us. So I think, I mean, yeah, we chatted about that before, and I think it's always a challenge. And I think how do we ask for that data rather than just saying, can you give us the data, when everyone just says no, or they just pretend they didn't hear it? Maybe it's how do we ask this differently, like under what conditions could you share some of the data with us, or how can we help you to get value out of your data that we can then also use it, etc. But that is, I think, one of the biggest gaps in this work is that we were unable to get the level of measured data, and getting 5,000 surveys for us was much, much easier than 5,000 meters in homes across rural Nigeria. But it is something that we're looking out for.
All right, and then we call it a wrap here. Thank you so much. Please come up a round of applause. Thank you so much. Good to learn something new today.
Thanks so much, everyone. And
Right.
I'll be here for the rest of the week, so come chat to me if you're interested. Cheers.
You could just... Okay. It's getting a bit technical, right? Anybody lost yet? We are still in track. Okay, making sense. I like the attention. It's better I have a number of people that are very interested than a large crowd of people who, I mean, are not just with us. So I think our audience are doing it. A round of applause for yourself once again. Okay, before we go for lunch, we're going to have breakout sessions very soon, sort of a deep dive, more into some of the topics where we have those granular conversations where we brainstorm amongst ourselves, and we've divided this into different groups, and with different topics. So what I want to do now is to invite the moderators to sort of come and talk about their session, and you hear about it, and I think we can choose which of the session you want to go into, right, Vivian? Yes, so once the moderators, talk about the different sessions they'll be leading, and anyone that's of interest for you, the moderators will sort of let us know how that will go. All right, because of time, quickly, I would like to invite the moderators. For the first session is moderated by Vivian. Vivian is the CEO of EnAccess, and this topic is on open source in energy access collaborators community. Vivian will tell us more when it comes. Please, a round of applause for him.
Thank you. Yeah, I prefer to stay. So, yeah, in the breakout session A, the OSEAS collaborators community, we want to discuss how can we better improve collaborations. I mean, I think this is a good example here, this event, but we can't unfortunately meet every week in person and discuss. We also have to get things done and also cost a bit of money. But there are other ways to collaborate, maybe once a year, every 2 years having meetings like that. But also using online tools, having some methods, some agreements we have to work together. This one is not working. Now it's working. And yeah, and finding the missing building blocks in the sector to do so. So I have a few questions that I have collected for myself, but also from other people discussing with them. These are guiding questions. The idea is a breakout session that we sit together, that we sit on a table very openly, and also the participants bring up questions, obviously. So, I mean, the one thing is who should work together. We have to talk, who do we want to target? That's what we first have to see to actually find the right way to work together, because, I mean, there's the OSCAR community, the open source community Africa, then there are the policymakers, there are practitioners, there are the academics. Obviously, in the ideal world, we all work perfectly together with all our different backgrounds, but we also know that in the reality, that's possibly not that easy. So we possibly need to make a focus on who do we want to bring together. What are the hindrances today to these collaborations? Then EnAccess, that's a particular question from EnAccess. We have, since a couple of years, an open source community online, which had been active. It's not today. And we would like to understand also see why is that and what could we do better. For example, the Discord community could be a new start to do that, but let's discuss if and how we can do that. And yeah, and what specific methods and tools we want to apply. This is more general, but, oh, wrong direction. And this is first assessing a bit where we are, and then in the next part of the session I would like to discuss, for example, the Discord community, as I just said, is this a good place? Can we pull everybody there? And who can we pull there? That's where we have to ask the question in the first part. And then which methods and tools can we use to actually grow this community, to bring the people together in the first place, and then on the long term maintaining them? Because, I mean, the one is we have a community, but then we have to maintain it active and we have to maintain it happy. Yeah, and then this is possibly an outcome of the initial question, and who are we targeting? Is it one big community, or is it split in different communities because they speak different languages, they have different interests, and how would that be structured? So that's what we will discuss about. I have
we have a bit of materials to make it more interactive. So we are not sitting and I'm not talking in front. We are sitting in a round, and we have some post-its and some activities so that we have fresh minds. Yeah, that's the session one. Now I would invite. I'm always using the wrong direction. Yeah, you invite.
Vivian, you did just do that. Okay. All right. For the second one, on funding investment strategies, we invite the moderator for this, Chibu Kim, who is a climate and energy specialist. Chibu Kim, are you here? Okay. All right. Chibu Kim is the moderator for that session. Please, round of applause for him. We'll be clapping till you get here. All right. So walk us through.
Thank you very much. Okay, awesome. Afternoon, everyone. It's always good when you're speaking about investment and finance, and so I went to the back so that I can enjoy the applause all the way down here. But I think one of the key things, at least for me, when it comes to open source, is that it's always limited, particularly in Africa, by donor funding, really. And then maybe those who are really passionate about it and who are self-funding open source initiatives. And so what we'll be discussing around the breakout session will mainly be across two key thematic areas. The first one is how are open source initiatives, particularly in EnAccess, currently funded. So just looking at what the funding landscape and opportunities currently look like for open source and reviewing those holistically. And then secondly, identifying what funding gaps are existing as well, particularly in terms of sustainable funding for open source initiatives. And then the second part of the conversation will then focus on, so what next can we do? And so in terms of the solution, so what funding opportunities, Yeah, so the second one is what already exists that is not already being tapped into, and how can we tap into those as well? And then secondly, how can we now, so once we've identified them, how do we now develop like sustainable strategies towards that? And it's quite important because one of the benefits really for open source, well, to me, I'm not like a tech person per se, but it's the fact that we can leverage a lot of the open source platforms. I know, for example, I've worked closely with Dimitri and the team on EAE, and I know the impact of the EAE, particularly right now. There are some state governments who are developing like renewable energy investment portfolios and policies that are already using those to sort of like map out what exists. And these are open source platforms that they can literally leverage. And so there's a lot of opportunity in terms of that. But then we need, particularly when it comes to Africa, in terms of how do we now sustainably attract investment or finance these things beyond just being dependent on the next round of donor funding or applications and all of that too. So this session is mainly just looking at how do we, is a brainstorming session to really talk about how do we think through what financing options are out there and how do we tap into those. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you, Chibukem. The next session is going to be on data management, governance, security, and open data standards for energy access. And of course, no other person to moderate this than Dimitris Mentis from World Resource Institute. All right, he's here. Dimitris, welcome again. Please, a round of applause for him.
Yes, down. So before introducing this one, credits where credits are due. Chibuikem, where are you? He went outside. Still here? So for everyone's information, Chibuikem is one of the main reasons why we are here today. Thanks to Chibuikem, a couple of years ago, we were able to customize the Energy Access Explorer in Nigeria while you were the country manager of the Africa Clean Energy Technical Assistance Facility program. So without your support, there wouldn't be EA Nigeria, most likely today. And from our side, we wouldn't be able to push for this event to take place in Nigeria, and of course, with EnAccess as well. So thank you very much for all your efforts, Chibu. All right, coming to data management and governance. Again, As we understand today, this is not the responsibility of a single stakeholder. We get representatives from government, we get representatives from academia, civil society, private sector donors. How can we best manage data? There are three main questions we will be working on during this breakout session. What is needed from a data management infrastructure from a technical point of view? Data cataloging, metadata, storage, processing, cloud services, etc. What is needed? What is needed to build and to maintain such a system? And finally, which is the key or key departments to be hosting this system? Not only in Nigeria, but across geographies where this type of work is relevant. Data governance. Which are the key data providers? We keep on hearing about the issue of data scarcity, or data is not available when we need it, or is not available in the format that we need it. So who are the key data providers? What are the roles and responsibilities of the various data providers? And what is the frequency data providers will need to convene to exchange data in a standardized manner? So we'll be speaking about data management and data governance, and within that, aspects of data security. We heard yesterday and earlier today about some of the data being sensitive and cannot be shared. Which information is sensitive, right? We need to list this. Is there a preferred data license? We need to find out. And is there a specific cloud service that is preferred? We'll try to work on all these questions with whoever is going to join this particular breakout session. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much, Dimitris. One more session, which is going to be on the balance between open source and intellectual property. Okay, Princess Odiaka. Please, a round of applause for her.
Hi, everyone. So, give you a little bit of background of last year election. I mean, rather, was it this year? And they said something, if you don't like the election results, go to court, right? Good. They said so, right? But we are here talking about data and all that, just partial mapping of open source. So we have to like it because we don't want to go to court, right? So we're going to be discussing the balance between open source and intellectual property. So this is very important because, again, we need to understand what it is. So some people are startups. Some governments are just trying these things out. But do they even have the capacity? Do they even have the expertise to handle this? So these are one of the things we want to discuss about. Great. And again, let's look at, of course, the interoperability between the open source and the IPs. Great. So one of the things we're going to be talking about is the legal framework. Do we even have any, who are those in charge of the legal framework behind this open source or the IPs? If there are issues, who do we go to? Where's the arbitration? Where do they lie? I recall, let me give you an example. I recall getting into an NDA with someone, and you know what the person told me? I'm going to be deploying a carbon finance project in Nigeria, and the person said, if there are any court issues, we go to US. And I asked myself, please, I don't have transport to go to US and talk about what I did in Nigeria. It's not possible. So why am I saying this? It's very important for us to know what are the institutions backing, gaining this legal background or legal frameworks, backing Nigerian open source, backing the Nigeria IP. Where do we marry together all these jurisdictions and all that? Very important. And which MDA should lead this? Probably we don't have it now in Nigeria, but here we can make decisions. So I'm saying this because of a background where I'm coming from, right? So we can make those decisions here. And Dimitris is right to say that we should really have a lot of MDAs here, really, because this is kind of going to bring out a very strong communique that will send a very strong message to the notes are beautiful, so you can join my my session, right? Okay, so again, what's the need for this open source for agile product development? What's the benefits? So we're going to be looking into all these. Does it benefit our business operations? In what way does it benefit our business operations and all that? Great. So we're going to be talking about that. And so the final one we'll be looking at, is it open source versus IP, or should there be a collaboration between open source and IP? So these are what we want to talk about. Should we blend it, or should they stay separate? So these are one of the things. And what are the socio-economic implications of this? In fact, to be honest with you, I'm more interested in even the startups. I mean, the MSMEs. You understand? I mean, because again, I recall when some of the mini-grid developers are talking and all that, and they say, I use this, I use this, I use. To what extent do they even own something that they use within the open source? Or, I don't care, I don't need to own it, I just use it. So these are one of the things we'll talk about, and let's know the benefits. So, thank you very much.
Okay, so these are the sessions. You pick the breakout session of your choice. I've been part of the conversation, but may I ask the moderators to please come out once again? So maybe they've forgotten your face. Vivian, Dimitris, Chibikem, Princess. All right, so these are the moderators. I think the way we'll do it, but when we come back from lunch, which is after lunch, we'll go into these sessions. Please come so that they see you very well. We'll have maybe group 1, session 1, session 2 happen here, maybe, and session 3 and 4. Okay, A and B, session A, session B will happen here so that there's enough room, and then session C and D can happen just the next hall, down the hall there. So there's more room for interaction. Any questions? Question, please. Yes. What do I say?
Bad luck. No. I mean, yeah. Just a bit on the setting, maybe on the breakout session. It's 2 hours where we will be separated. Unfortunately, we can't cut us in two. And at the end, some, and not necessarily the moderators, in best case not the moderators, somebody as the group participants will present to all the results that have been discussed. And there's a bit of time to interact. Unfortunately, I mean, we can't do it differently. That's a bit to how we mitigate the fact that we can't cut us in 2 or 3 or 4. And I mean, now the next would possibly that we put us in certain corners and that we can find our teams once.
Another question? Okay. I can hear you. Just ask. Okay. Yes. Definitely. The conversation doesn't end here. I mean, on Discord, yes. Yes, of course. The conversation continues on Discord. Definitely. It doesn't end just in the sessions. So don't be worried. We got you in mind. All right. So these are the moderators. And I think we can go for lunch now. And when we come back from lunch, meet with your moderators. So find your teams first. Meet with your moderators before you go for lunch, and so they know you. Session A, B will happen here, and then C and D, the other hall, so there's enough room for everybody to engage. And we come back and share the outcomes with everyone in a couple of hours, just after lunch. And I look forward to it. All right, so before you go for lunch, please meet your moderators and register your interest to be part of the sessions. Any other questions, right? Everybody happy? Okay. Okay. All right. Group A. Okay. Group A. Omid Vivian. In the back. Okay. All group A's. All right. After lunch. Group B? Okay. Okay, 4 people. All right. Okay, here. Group B here. Take blue. Oh, okay. I like that. You met with Chibi, came Group C, Demetrius? Interesting. Oh, okay. Something is happening in Group C. Okay, Demetrius, they meet you on the other side. And Princess? Oh, Prof also joined Group C. I saw his hand. Professor Vadi, I saw your hand. All right, good. All right, Group C. D, rather, Group D. 2. But you can't. Okay. So 2 persons, I think. I mean, it's 3. Okay, it's fine. Princess on the other hall. Just maybe choose towards the end of the hall there. All right, everybody, please head for lunch downstairs at the restaurant, and please make sure you enjoy yourself. We'll be back in the next 40 minutes. 1 hour. Oh, okay. They've increased the time. I like to shorten it so they eat fast. All right, so we'll meet back in the next 1 hour to continue. Thank you so much.